A 94-year-old woman, over 146 countries visited, a crowd of 1 million people in Pakistan, and a message that critics called dangerous and believers called miraculous. Marilyn Hickey is gone, and whether you loved her, questioned her, or never heard of her, her story is one you need to know. Today, we're breaking down the life and legacy of Marilyn Hickey, one of the most remarkable and controversial figures in modern Christian television. She passed away this past Saturday in Denver, Colorado. She was 94 years old. Now listen, I'm not here to eulogize her blindly, and I'm not here to tear her down. We're going to look at the full picture, the faith, the impact, the criticism, and what her life actually means in the broader story of Christianity and global evangelism. Marilyn Allen Schweitzer was born on July 1st, 1931 in Dalhart, Texas, a small town in the Panhandle, the kind of place most people drive through without stopping. She became a Christian at 16. And here's something I find fascinating. She went on to study collective foreign languages at the University of Northern Colorado, graduating in 1953. Languages. That choice says something about who she would become. In 1954, she married Wallace "Wally" Hickey, an Assemblies of God minister. Together, they settled in Denver, and in 1960, just 6 years into their marriage, they founded a congregation. That church eventually evolved into what is today known as Encounter Church. Around this same time, they crossed paths with T.L. Osborne, a giant in Pentecostal evangelism. And that meeting? It shaped everything. Osborne's theology of mass evangelism, his belief that the gospel could reach anyone anywhere in the world, that DNA got into Marilyn Hickey's ministry and never left. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Marilyn started leading home Bible studies in the early 1960s. Small, intimate gatherings. Women in living rooms. But by 1973, 10 years later, those small groups had multiplied into 22 separate study circles. And that same year, at 42 years old, not 22, not 32, 42, she launched a television ministry. Let that sink in. Most people at 42 are thinking about settling down, about comfort, about coasting. Marilyn Hickey was just getting started. Her ministry was built around a verse from Isaiah, chapter 11, verse 9, "Cover the earth with the word." That became her motto, her mission, her entire operating philosophy. And she wasn't just another televangelist. She was one of the few women, let me repeat that, one of the few women to launch a broadcast ministry at that time, in the 1970s, in a space dominated entirely by men. That is not a small thing. Her program eventually became Today with Marilyn and Sarah, when her daughter Sarah Bowling joined as co-host in 1996. It aired on Daystar, Word Network, GEB America, TCT, and Cornerstone Television. Millions of viewers, decades of content. Now look, we can't have an honest conversation about Marilyn Hickey without talking about the controversy. And there's real substance here. Her theology drew fire from a lot of quarters. She was squarely in the prosperity gospel camp, what critics call name it and claim it. The idea that your faith, your positive confession, your giving, these things unlock blessings from God. Health, wealth, breakthroughs. For millions of her followers, this was life-giving. They found hope in her teachings, healing in her prayers, and purpose in her vision. But critics, and there are serious ones, argue that prosperity theology exploits vulnerability, that it puts the burden on the believer when things don't work out, that it can turn faith into a transaction. And then there were her fundraising methods. This is where things get, look, I'll just tell you what was reported. Alabama religion reporter Greg Garrison documented that Hickey was known for sending items through the mail to donors: miracle carrot seeds, blessed ropes, blessed pennies, anointed prayer cloths, red elastic bands, in exchange for donations. Now, how you interpret that depends heavily on your theological framework. For Pentecostal believers, point-of-contact objects have a long tradition. For skeptics, this is manipulation of the vulnerable and desperate. Both reactions are real. Both deserve to be named. And I think the honest takeaway here is this: When a ministry operates at the scale hers did, millions of viewers, global reach, major fundraising, scrutiny isn't persecution. Scrutiny is appropriate, and the people raising these concerns weren't doing so out of nowhere. But here's where I want to spend some real time, because this part of her story gets underreported, and it is genuinely extraordinary. Marilyn Hickey traveled to more than 146 countries over more than 5 decades. 146 countries, and not just the easy ones, not just comfortable, English-speaking, Western Christian nations. She went to Pakistan, she went to Iran, she went to Sudan, Ethiopia, Egypt. Muslim-majority nations where the message she carried was not always welcome. In 2016, at 85 years old, she addressed a crowd in Karachi, Pakistan, that was reported to be over 1 million people. 1 million. She used to say simply, "I love Muslims and they love me." And that's not just a quote for the cameras. Her daughter Sarah's 2009 encounter with abandoned newborn twins in Ethiopia helped birth a humanitarian organization called Saving Moses, focused on caring for babies from birth to age 5 in some of the world's most vulnerable regions. This is a woman who didn't just talk about faith. She went. She showed up. Decade after decade. Into her 80s. Marilyn Hickey authored or co-authored more than 110 books. 110. Works like The Power of Prayer and Fasting, Breaking Generational Curses, Names of God, and her autobiography, fittingly titled It's Not Over Until You Win. She served on Oral Roberts University's Board of Regents and chaired it from 1988 to 2007. ORU gave her an honorary doctorate of divinity in 1986 and, nearly 3 decades later, awarded her the Lifetime Global Achievement Award. The Assemblies of God Theological Seminary gave her its Pillar of Faith Award in 2021. George O. Wood, then interim president of Evangel University, said at the time, "Here in the United States and around the world, Marilyn has a sterling reputation in ministry." Sterling reputation, that's the word he used. Her husband Wallace died in 2012 after a long battle with Alzheimer's. They'd been married 58 years. She leaves behind 2 children, Sarah and Michael, and 4 grandchildren. One of those grandchildren, Isabel Bowling, now works in the ministry and produces a daily podcast of Marilyn Hickey's archived teachings. The legacy continues. So what do we make of Marilyn Hickey? She was a pioneer, full stop, a woman who entered a male-dominated space at 42 and built one of the most globally recognized ministries in television history. She preached in places most ministers won't even visit as tourists. She built bridges across religious divides that most people think are unbridgeable. She was also controversial. Her theology raised real questions. Her fundraising raised real concerns. And those questions don't disappear just because someone has died. But here's what I keep coming back to. She lived a life of conviction. Whether you agreed with her or not, she was not sitting still. She was not playing it safe. She was not asking for permission. At 85 years old, she was standing before 1 million people in Karachi. What are we doing? The ministry put it this way in their announcement. A faithful servant of God, Marilyn dedicated her life to covering the earth with God's word. Whatever your theology, that's a life fully lived. Rest in peace, Marilyn Hickey. 1931 to 2025. 94 years. If this video gave you something to think about, hit that like button and subscribe. We do deep dives like this regularly. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Did you grow up watching Marilyn Hickey? Do you have questions about prosperity theology? What do you think her legacy really is? I want to hear from you. I'll see you in the next one.